Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, Ed Smith. Today, we usually sit down and just kind of recap the week that was and some of the things that maybe happened over the course of the last week in football, and some of the teams that we outlined. And so last week we looked over the family business 16 team large style, the family business 14 team kicker replacement, family business 16 team IDP, who's better 12 team Ring of Fire 384 team, and the Last Second Dynasty 12 team that premiered this morning. So all those teams, and maybe the takeaway of some of those teams really was just kind of the value of the tight end. I think that's going to be a reoccurring theme, and then maybe you guys got to see a little bit of a different look in who's better, just because that one is a divisional payout, for everybody in the division, of the winning division. And then naturally, it looks like a lot of attention was given to the Ring of Fire, which I put out there pretty good. That's the 384 team league, and actually looking to establish one of those that I run this year. So just in the beginning stages of putting that together, so stay tuned for that. And that kind of segments our into the question that we got in the chats this week and for the show, and that's setting up a dynasty league as the commissioner. And so you're going to probably get a rant today. I have some definite strong opinions. I will say this just to qualify it. There's a lot of ways to run a dynasty league. I'm going to give you some experiences. I run 25, so I don't think it's the most by any means, but I definitely have seen them in operation. I've been in a dynasty league since 1998, so I've kind of watched ebbs and flows, and then I've run leagues, with running 25 and being in 75 dynasty leagues, and that number's growing, actually drafting one as we speak. I just want to kind of give some styles. And I will say this, and these guys don't sponsor my show, so just kind of know that, but a shout out, shameless plug for Sleeper. All 75 leagues I play in are on Sleeper. Used to play in Yahoo, ESPN, some of those kind of leagues over the years, but Sleeper, just for me, it's all nice to be in one spot. And for the Dynasty community, I honestly think that it's a very top end, smart community that plays on Sleeper. So I'm really impressed by the skill level that's there. So enjoy that too. If you're looking to beat the best, I feel like that's where the best are. So shout out to Sleeper and for all the nuances that they have, and their customer service is top notch. I mean, I'm always picking their brains, seeing what we can do to make leagues better. And so as we dive right in, let's just dive in. You want to set up a dynasty league. It's important, in my opinion, definitely, and I think if you talk to players, they really appreciate this. Post the rules. Have rules, post them. I'm going to give you some different ideas of rules you need to think about, and put them in the pins. Put them right there so everybody can see them. So no matter what happens, you have yourself covered. The bases are covered, and you can always refer back to those rules, because even sometimes the rules need to be changed as the years go on, and that's okay. I'm a big democratic guy, so I like to have people vote on rules. So the rules in each of my leagues are slightly different based on the league and the flow of the league and who the people are in the league. So it's based on that and that vote. But what we don't do is we don't change those rules midstream. Now there are rare exceptions to that. That we can look and make sure that there wasn't a competitive advantage. I think back to the beginning of the 2020 season when we had a global pandemic. I instituted a rule to allow for something that never happened, but if Tuesday night games would have been canceled and the whole game, and those teams wouldn't have played for that whole week, and it was after all the rest of the teams played on Sunday, and you couldn't have picked up players, and we would have had a lineup that didn't make any sense, that was just uncontrollable. It wouldn't have made sense. So we had a subbing policy that we never had to use, that we just kind of were proactive, and we instilled that before any of those Tuesday night games happened, though. So we were really proactive, I feel like, with those leagues, and making sure that we were covering bases. And so then we actually put that in place this year as well. We never really felt that threat as much with COVID. So I feel like those are the kind of things that we that we're able to change as we go. And then an example of something I tried to change midstream to correct a tanking problem that I was kind of called out on and had to change it back was rookie draft order. And we'll get to some of the good ways to do that, but you can't do that in the middle of the year. I mean, once the year is started, people are trading, people are doing things, and so there needs to be some lead time for those kind of rule changes, because that's what we're looking for, is for somebody to be devoted to the dynasty program and really diving in for the long term. So we don't want to punish long term participation. We want to actually punish short term participation, in my opinion, when we have a dynasty league. We don't want people to come in, try it like a food they may or may not like, and then spit it out and leave and go on. So you'll notice all the rules I have are for somebody to be there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and 24 years in running. We're going to go into year 2025 in my long time dynasty league. So it's a long time to have the same players. It's a long time to have. A long time ago, Peyton Manning was a rookie, in that on that team, and so just kind of think that through, and some of the players that maybe we had at those times, on those teams. So as we look at putting those rules in the pins, I think it's good for the commissioner to kind of take a self-evaluation of what they want the outcome for their league. Is it something that you really want to last? And is it a group of friends? I have two leagues that are pretty much people I know. I know everybody in those leagues, and so the rules are a lot more lax as far as payment, because those guys look me in the eye and I know they're good for it, and their wives would never want to hear that they didn't pay me. And for the leagues, and it's all males, but it could be females, and that's not really not important, but it's just kind of like, I know their families and they would never not pay. And if they couldn't pay, I'd probably pay for them. So the money isn't the thing in that kind of league. It's more of a more casual league. And so in the one league I'm speaking of, we play a 10-team league. I don't love 10-team leagues, but for this audience, it makes a lot of sense, because it's more of a casual league. But these aren't expert, if you will, players, and not that I'm an expert by any means. Just have a wide array of teams, which means I have a wide array of players. So it's important to know if it's a friends and family league, or if it's something that you're really trying to do to kind of gauge how you are compared to the rest of the fantasy community. We then look to, when we look at how long we want it to last, we have to look at the money. So the more expensive, if you will, I feel like you might get somebody that's going to be a little bit more committed, because they're going to have to, stretch themselves a little bit thinner, and they might take it a little bit more serious. But it's not the end all be all. I will tell you that I personally, I haven't played in a free league, so I guess I can't give you any feedback on how free leagues work, but I can't imagine that they have staying power, and I wouldn't want to be the commissioner involved in a free league, because as we look at the money, I use another site called League Safe to control all of the money, and I feel like I think all but 2 of my 75 leagues, so 73 leagues, use League Safe, and there's one that uses Venmo, and one is a friends and family league that I'm in, that I'm not the commissioner of, and we basically send him money by PayPal, and that's the 1998 league. So, I don't change City Hall. Those guys do it their way, and I'm good with that. The commissioner of the Venmo league, he's been good throughout a year, so I'm actually paid up in that league through 2024. But the good news there is yes, I Venmo'd him that money, and I have those receipts, but that was a less expensive league, and honestly though, if it was a lot more expensive, if it was $1,000 an entry or something like that, I would have to think twice, just not knowing who those players in the game are. So what I like about League Safe is it's a league vote, which means that there's not a whole lot of uncanny things that I've seen in League Safe over the course of the 3 years that I've used it. So used it for 3 years, kind of watched a lot of different actors operate, some bad actors, and so I've seen how they circumvent the system for League Safe. One of the things that I've learned, and I am working with them and their customer service on how maybe we can better do this, but I'm very careful to lock the League Safe when I'm not collecting money, so that people can't just take out refunds because they're frustrated by their inability to read those rules that I talked about being pinned in the pins. So I usually have all the rules pinned. If an owner does not read them, that I don't really give a refund for their inability to read. I mean, I kind of try to be very explicit, but I also don't have a high toleration for people just not understanding or comprehending when I try to be very clear, and then also try to be very kind when I answer the questions when they ask. So, that's kind of how I've run my leagues, and to have 25 of them, and I don't think I have any demerits, if you will, anywhere from people that left in a tiff. I mean, I think in the end, I really, my goal, so when I run a league, my desired outcome is to keep the same group of people together as long as I can, understanding there's going to be lifetime changes. Spoke of that 1998 league. There was 5 or 6 years that I didn't do anything in that league. I drafted and I set the lineup and I just kind of went on my merry way because my kids were growing up. I was going to soccer games on Sunday afternoon, not watching football. So I get that life happens, and so some people would actually even bail out of the league for that time period. That's fine. There's a couple ways to bail out. There's one is to sell your team and get somebody in as an owner and not task the commissioner with that. And then there's that to just drop out and let the commissioner find his own way. And I do some things to make that beneficial to my ability to finding people. So I always, 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 100% of the time, have owners pay one extra year. So right now, all 25 of my leagues, we're paying the 2023 season before we'll ever do a rookie draft. And I set the time frame somewhere around April 15th, around tax day. And that way, that gives me from April 15th until the beginning of May to just fill in the holes for the people that didn't pay. For 2023, I'll bring in people for 2022 to draft that rookie draft, and then they'll be required to pay 2023. Then the next thing that we allow is following the rookie draft in Sleeper, they allow for 2024 and 2025 picks to be traded as well. And in order to trade those picks, you must pay for those years in League Safe. So, and then once the regular season starts, I just monitor, and no trades that involve 2024 and 2025 picks going out can be made until those owners pay for that year. So what that allows for is there's not going to be a team that has no first round draft capital, and then that person ducks out at the end of the year, wins some money, and then just leaves with trading away all the future assets after they've cashed their check, or worse, they didn't win money and they just left and bolted, and nobody wants that team. I took over a really terrible team, and we haven't outlined it yet, but it was a 16 team, and I took it over before the rookie draft of 2021. It's a super flex league, and I had like no quarterbacks on that team. So how do you have a 16 team, no quarterbacks, no running backs, no receivers, basically starting with nothing, and I had no draft capital. So thank God they gave me 2021, 2022 paid, and so now I'm paying for 2023, the first year I actually have a rookie pick in the first round. And I'm struggling. I lost last year. I was the 16th team last year, so it's a bad team, and I don't even get the first round pick because somebody traded that away. And I actually went back and looked at the startup draft because I'm like, they don't have any of the first 5 rounds of players. Like, there was nobody from rounds 1 through 5 still left on their roster. They were trading for players like Teddy Bridgewater and Cam Newton. Those are the guys that I was left with. And they traded away Saquon Barkley and Gibson and things like that weren't anywhere to be found, and they were given first round picks in addition. So then they bolted. So that's why we always pay for a year up front. And I feel like it is a peeve of mine because I haven't started 25 leagues that I commissioner. So it's important to understand that. I've taken over about 5 this year from leagues I just didn't want to see die, and I needed to implement things. And 0% of the time have I taken over a league that's paid ahead a year. 0%. So every year I take over leagues that the commissioner comes in, thinks it's a great idea to start a league, and all of a sudden they don't collect for the next year, and then we have this mass defection of players, and then we got to scurry around and get people to pay for 2 years in year 2 when the team, and we have if it's a 12-team league, we probably have 6 orphans. But kind of how I build a team is I build for year 3 and longer. So I sure don't want that league to fall apart. But it's also, when you draft a dynasty, I think it's counterproductive to just fold up like the XFL has done. And we try to keep those things going. At least if you're gonna do a keeper league or a redraft league, then do that. Don't do a dynasty league if you don't want it to be a lasting event. So I guess that's what I'm going to say about money, and so you can tell that I'm kind of passionate about it because I think it's something that maybe goes underlooked because people love to draft, but the Dynasty game has one veteran draft and then it has a rookie draft each year, and so that's where you build your team. And so it's just important to understand that when we start to look at how skilled do you want the players to be, do you want this to be your friends and family, and that's okay. Then we start to look at how many starting positions you have, and then another um, idea that you need to look at is, do I want IDP? For individual defensive players. And so that's a community all of its own. I think I counted and I have about 12 IDP leagues. So I'm a dabbler, is what I would call myself in the IDP world. I'm not good at it, honestly. I came in second in one league and made the championship. And last year I was dabbling and had a playoff team, but I'm not really a very good IDP player. I more play those as more of a novice and try to see how I'm doing. And as you'll see in my videos when I outline them, I'm not good at them. I mean, I know that that's something I'm working on. I want to become a better fantasy player, and so it's just kind of what I'm working on now. And you guys get to kind of see that as we go. And the guys in my league probably love me because it's a donation. Now, having said that, I hope that I'm not playing in too many expensive IDP leagues so that my lessons aren't too expensive. I do have $100 league that which is near the top end of my spectrum of leagues, but I do have a $100 franchise team league that I guess I outlined before, where I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars and can't win. But beyond that, they're all $50 leagues or something little bit lower, where I'm just more practicing, I think you could say, in the IDP world. But it's important to know that one of the scorings that I like as an IDP commissioner, which I'm also not very good at and try to keep myself away from IDP commissioning, but is the 1-2-3 scoring. And if you don't know what that is, you just kind of look it up. But what I think it does is it balances offensive and defensive scoring and kind of elevates those defensive players a little bit, so that the IDP smart guys or good guys actually have an advantage because they know who scores in IDP. I'm still trying to figure all that out, but that's where that goes. And then when we look at skilled players, I guess it's important to know that the biggest way to control skilled players, I guess, is through how many teams, but then even more than that, how many starters per team, and it's that total number. So probably my preferred way, or the way that I play the most of my teams in a 12-team format, is going to be with 12 starters, and so that math is real easy. That's 144, and so when you start to look at that, that's 144 starters through the NFL's 32 teams, and so that's kind of how I look at it. And then a lot of my teams, I would say, majority of them have a total of 30 roster spots times the 12 teams. So if we look at that, that's 360 players in the NFL. And so you divide that by 32, and you're just around that 12 or 13 NFL skill position players for the 4 positions. So if you look at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, if you have 12 or 13 players that per team, think the Houston Texans, 12 or 13 players on their team. That's the number that I guess I prefer to play with, and is what I think is pretty, pretty deep. Now, I do have teams that you have, of those 4 skill positions, that the numbers get up around 17 per team, and so then you're starting to talk about wide receiver 7 from the Texans is on somebody's roster, and so that's a little bit harder, naturally, and the waivers are a little bit thinner. And then you just have to be a little bit more balanced if you're trying to win. But that's going to take you into another skill set. But that's an important idea before you just start picking numbers there, that you realize what you're trying to do. Now, again, this is a personal preference, and I caution us to say that there's one way that you have to do this. It's really, it depends on your goals. And so I said some things that I think you have to do. If you want your league to last, you have to pay a year ahead. You have to pin your rules in the pins and post your rules in the pins and not change them. But what you don't have to do is make it deep or shallow, or have lots of starting positions or not. Just understand the differences between the two, and how the skilled player reacts to the deeper bench and the deeper starters, and the less skilled player, and more randomness happens when you have less of those kind of things. And I'm not saying those are bad. It's just that's a different audience that maybe is playing in those leagues, and that's okay. But that's what you're going to gain or lose when you have depth and and availability on the waiver wire and on teams. And so, that's kind of the nuances. And then as we look at scoring, sometimes we can use starters and scoring to drive draft value. So if you want to make it like the NFL, then you need to drive the value of the quarterback, drive the value of the receiver and tight end above the running back. If you want to make it like old school fantasy, when we didn't have PPR, then you just let the running backs go with kind of a standard scoring format. Is going to drive the running backs to the first picks in the draft. So, and you have one quarterback. So some of the ways you can do that is you can expand the quarterbacks. I'm in some leagues, and so team-wise, I guess I would go to some team leagues. So I have two 10-team leagues, tons of 12s, tons of 14s, tons of 16s, and then three 32-team leagues, and one 384-team league that's basically divided into 32 12-team leagues. So I play in a very large margin, and as you can see, I don't play in too many 10s because they kind of annoy me, but they are what they are. And they even have their own nuances. I actually play in an 8-team redraft league every year, and that's just because I know the guys, like the guys, and as random as that is, and it's so random. There's no, I almost think there's no skill to the thing, but I can almost tell you I'm just going to draft running backs until I can't, and then I'll draft receivers after that, and then I'll pluck a quarterback because I just need one of the top 8. And who cares? And a tight end is the same thing. They only start one, and there's no premium for it, so who cares again? And I just draft the tight end last. And I think we actually, I forget if we use kickers or I think we use defenses there. I just pick a defense at the very last pick. Like I don't even, and a lot of times I don't even pick a defense. I just wait till the beginning of the year and then I pick one up later and drop somebody. So that's a random league, and so, but I like those guys. They like to bust on me because I have so many teams and I never can win the damn league because it's so random. It's a random league. It's like donating money, but I guess it's a good fun on the board, and so sometimes I guess it's important to know what we do with it. But scoring leads to again depth and what you want in the draft. One of my favorite scorings is in a 12-team league, and I'll kind of go to the 12-team league just because it is probably the most frequently used piece, but doesn't mean it's the best piece. It's just the most frequently used. I sometimes like 2 quarterback, 1 superflex 12-team leagues, which starts 36. Makes that quarterback really valuable. That feels like the NFL. Like in the rookie draft, you better pick one in the top 5 picks, even if there's not a quarterback. Like they're really, I'm drafting in just a 2 quarterback league right now, a 12-team league, and I think there was 8 of the first 12 picks were quarterbacks. In the first round. That's probably how a startup draft would go in the NFL. Like, there's not much else. There's Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey and Najee Harris and I think one receiver, Justin Jefferson, and that's it. That was it. That was the extent of the first round and 8 quarterbacks. So, I think that's an important distinction of that's what I like. Doesn't mean it's the right way. I like 2 tight ends. There's a lot of people that hate tight ends. I guess I want to reward people that want to draft Travis Kelce, because if you only have 1 tight end, then I can make up for that with a great running back room. But if you have to start 2 tight ends and I've got to start somebody that's, Segura or somebody, that's just not even a person, or Degora, from Green Bay, then, and you're starting Kelce, then you have a distinct advantage. If you're starting Kelce and I'm starting Hawkinson, it's all the same. Yes, is Kelce better? Yes, but the downside to Hawkinson isn't that great. Not when I have Jonathan Taylor and you're trotting out Naheem Hines. Like that. I'd rather have that go that way with things, but it makes it a lot more different if I've got to have Degora with your Kelce and Jonathan Taylor to Naheem Hines. Now we got something, especially if the PPR backs are getting a bonus for receptions. Now we really have another advantage, and so you can really build a team. So it really depends on how you want to build teams. I think and I don't have this in my leagues because I jumped in leagues afterwards, but I have leagues that are 2 tight end, 2.5 PPR for tight ends, 1 point PPR for receivers, and running backs. So if you think that through, then the tight end becomes really valuable. The 3 for 30 guy is getting, you know, 12 points without even having a touchdown. He's 18 with a touchdown, and that's just the average tight end. So that's a lot better in the flex than maybe the fifth receiver on your team can get. So then you start to really have value in those tight ends, and it allows people to build with a quarterback. It allows people to build with a tight end room, and you know the standard way to build with the running back room, and they're going to go fast anyway. And then people with receivers are going to, you know, jump in behind that as well. So a lot of different ways to build that team and score points. So it kind of gives um, owners or league mates a chance to win a lot of different ways. And so that's what my preference is, but definitely not the only way to play, you know, fantasy football. So looking at the scoring, and you set that in Sleeper, it's really easy to set, but almost all of them, all the platforms at this point probably are very customizable, and you can customize bonus points and things of that nature. Play in leagues that give points for completions, negative points for incompletions, points for interception, negative points for interceptions, all kinds of bonuses over 40 yards, 30 yards, you know, just different things, first down bonuses. There's all kinds of things and nuances that it's important to look at before you draft, but I mean, I'm in lots and lots of different scoring formats. It actually, in a lot of cases, doesn't change the way I draft. So just kind of an important thing is it's important to know, but not important to over um, do your draft order based on those scoring. But it's important to know because there are some things like 2.5 points for a tight end means you better get some. If you don't have any tight ends by the end of that draft, you're going to be in trouble for a long time in that league because replenishing tight ends through the rookie draft is going to be a real long, you know, long haul. So that's an important piece with that. I prefer. I've heard it said, and I guess this would make a lot of sense to have, you know, double the amount of bench spots of starters, but with 12 starters, you know, we usually go to an 18 bench or maybe even sometimes a 13 bench and 5 taxi to get to 30 is probably a way that we work a lot of times, but you know, that's kind of feels comfortable. I would say that I learned with it in an IDP league. I had this 57 round draft in an IDP league, and that just felt a little bit too deep. You know, if you think about, and that was a 16 team league, and it just took us to a point where we were really drafting special teams players, and so that's another thing that you can do scoring wise. If you have a league that steep, you know, maybe that cornerback that's actually a returner needs to get some points for the return yards so that they become somebody that makes some sense to plug in the defensive back spot, or a receiver that is the returner maybe makes some more sense to put in a receiver spot because, you know, you're 7 receivers deep or something, and you just, you know, want somebody to not have to start somebody that probably isn't playing, especially with bye weeks. So it's important, I think, to divide the total number of players rostered by 32 and make sure that it makes sense when you're setting up these things. But one of the things that maybe is a misconception with Sleeper, and I'm just going to address Sleeper, is the taxi squad. There's a setting there that says, do you want taxi squad players to be allowed to be there 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Sleeper kind of looks at that a little differently than maybe people think when they read that. If it says 1 year of experience, that actually is through the player's second year. Even though it says 1 year of experience, right now Jamar Chase has 1 year of experience. He'll still only have 1 year of experience through the whole 2022 year season, and so conceivably could sit on the taxi squad if that setting was marked at 1 year of experience until that league rolls over to 2023. So people will think, oh, 1 year experience, that's just rookies only. No, it's rookies and first year players in their second year are allowed on the taxi squad. The way to circumvent that, if you just want rookies in, is once you roll over the league, you make it mandatory that the league mates activate every single taxi squad player to their regular roster. And when they do that, then you have that setting is just rookies only, but you have to specify that. I don't know how many times I asked commissioners that question. You know, are you going with the Sleeper rules, or are you demanding that we roll them, you know, out of there? And they're like, well, whatever Sleeper says, then we're 2 weeks into the season and they realize that I'm still have Jamar Chase on my taxi, and they're like, well, that's illegal, and I'm like, but it's not, because you didn't change the settings, and we talked about this, so I think it's important to understand the nuances, and I guess I try to dig in and find out the whys behind how it is. But that's one of the misconceptions is in the taxi is that there's always a way to do things with Sleeper, but it's understanding what the setup is, and what the buttons you're pushing are. The next item we're going to tackle is the IR spot. This has a lot of flexibility with Sleeper, so the IR can be players from suspended and out to even doubtful players can go there if you choose to. I don't think I'm in any leagues that doubtful can go there. There's all different levels of what owners are comfortable with. I guess I like out players being able to be put on IR, because I think that the 90 minutes before game time, that's when I go, deactivate all those healthy scratches and put them on the list. But some leagues don't want that, and so they don't allow that to happen. And so you have a lot of flexibility as a commissioner as to how you want to allow your league to run. I think that takes me to the waiver or fab idea. I prefer fab bidding, and I prefer to have it bid every day, and my preferred time is 12 o'clock Eastern time, and that's very specific. The reason I like 12 o'clock noon Eastern time for this is the 1 o'clock games. I want people to be able to pick up players that were maybe scratches before that 1 o'clock game and put them on their roster that they just weren't aware of. And yes, are there scratches before 4 p.m. East Coast time games? Yes. Are there scratches before the 8 o'clock game? Yes. But the majority of the games on an NFL weekend are that 1 o'clock game, and so I want to give that time slot the most priority to ads without opening up a free-for-all, first come, first serve, because at that point, I've been in leagues where people just go and monopolize players that can just pick up, and I think it may give a player like me an advantage, but actually it isn't, because I have too many teams and I can't jump on it quick enough. But it does give me the advantage. If I see somebody picked up, I can just go throughout 75 leagues and just pick them up. And if you're at work, you're not getting any of those players. So like Eli Mitchell, we could just get him before everybody else could get him. And so I'm not sure if that's a real fair thing. So I like to have fab where it's a bidding situation and you get to play against your league mates. But I also like having that 12 o'clock time frame on the East Coast time, because the majority of the games are at 1. Gives you a chance to, you have to set it on the hour, so it allows you to have the flexibility of putting somebody in your starting lineup if you're running a little bit short. Now, our waivers in most of my leagues are very tight, and there's not much there, so you're not picking up anybody beyond James Washington to start. So it's not like you're getting a quality player at that time of the week, but it's a 0 or James Washington. At least you have a shot. And then I run them on Monday at 1 o'clock as well. And so I would say if you have somebody that's doubtful on Monday, in the Monday night game, it's good to pick up a player at that position, even if it's a real low-end player, and just to have so you can swap them in at that position. And so even having the 1 o'clock or the 12 o'clock time slot on Monday for those pickups for those Monday night players is okay. I've in some leagues where they maybe run waivers just Saturdays and Wednesdays. Well, that's not very good, because you can, in my opinion, you can get yourself into a situation where you can't start a player. I was in a league where I had a kicker, and it was a late scratch on Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and I couldn't pick up a kicker, and I'm not sure the goal of the league was for everybody to carry an extra kicker or take zeros. They actually told me I had to start a legal kicker, and so what was interesting was it was the New England kicker that was a late scratch, but then there was other kickers that were late scratches throughout the year too, and they didn't enforce that rule. And so that's another peeve of mine. Don't have rules you're not going to enforce. They gave me a bunch of crap about it, and then when that Carolina kicker was injured pregame, that guy was just allowed to not start a kicker as well, and so I basically had to take an automatic L because I forfeit because I didn't have a kicker, and that team was just okay. And it didn't make that much difference to me, but it was just apply the rules and have rules and realize that if your rules are impossible, you're gonna struggle to have long lasting, commitment from players. But having said that, that's kind of my take on the fab waiver situation. There are rolling waivers. I mean, I have some leagues that are rolling waivers, and waiver spots matter, and so I just kind of go with that. And I understand that each commissioner is going to run their league a little different, and that's okay too. I mean, that's kind of why I'm in 75 leagues. I get to see what works, what doesn't, and so I've kind of come up with my ways based on some of the things I see. So I guess that's an important distinction. As I see those trades that go down, I see a lot of shake your head trades, but you know what? That's kind of the game, and I guess I come away and say that we all have these different values, and so it probably gives me some opinions about some of the other things we'll cover here today. Um, when we look at trades, and I guess I just a great segment into that. I personally believe that you shouldn't veto trades. That collusion is the thing that we want to avoid. And this is me personally. I prefer to play in leagues that have that ideal system. I don't love vetoing trades. I'm actually in one league that I can think of specifically that vetoes trades, and it's almost like I want to block you from trading. Like it's an extra layer to the league that you block people that you don't want to trade and you align with people you do. It almost encourages collusion. And so it's kind of a stupid rule. Like I feel like it's kind of stupid, but if you want to have collusion, I guess you can veto trades. But I don't know if it should protect us if it's a money league from making bad decisions. Like we could make a bad decision to start, and that's the other thing when we talk about tanking a little bit as well. But so trades, there's a lot of things you can do with a trade. Is it going to make me better today, tomorrow, or never? And do we even know? I look back at some of the trades that I made, some of the trades I didn't make, and some of the trades that I shake my head that I made. And so, but even at the time, they looked bad, didn't look bad, changed. Uh, Everything changes so quickly in the NFL. I mean, just go back and look at your drafts from 2018 if you're in the leagues from there, and see what's changed till 2022, just 4 short years later. A lot has changed in those 4 years, and so in our opinion of players. And so when you're in a dynasty league, a lot's going to change in the next 4 years until we get to 2026 and draft. So it's hard for me to judge, and then every league has a little bit different in trading. So I personally hate trade pending time, because if I make a trade at 12:52 on a Sunday afternoon East Coast time, I should be able to put that in my lineup if that's the way the rules are. You shouldn't be able to put it in your lineup, but because the commissioner was busy and couldn't push my trade through, I can't put it in my lineup when it happens. It kind of develops this unplaying playing field unless you have a commissioner that is going to commit every week that before every game he is going to monitor that site like the clockwork and never be driving, never be doing anything, never be in an emergency, never doing anything in his life but watching the fantasy football board and pushing through trades that happen at 12:59, then I guess it works. But so I guess me as a commissioner, I don't want to put that pressure on myself. That what if I miss one? I don't want to be the guy that didn't allow a trade to go through that should have went through because I didn't push the button in time. So, and then I look at trades that do get reversed. So I reverse trades when people trade picks that they didn't pay for, and I'll reverse them, and I tell people that pretty much up front. That's in the pins. You pay for the picks, or it's getting reversed. So just know that's how I reverse it. And God help you if you collude and I catch you, because that's probably the only time I'll ever get angry in fantasy football. And then I look at it and say, geez, I spend too many thousands of dollars on this sport to have people steal from me. And that's what I view colluding as. That's basically people just fraudulently behaving to try to gain an edge in an illegal way. And so you do with that what you want, but you don't collude. You won't be around my leagues if I catch you colluding, and so that's kind of how I roll, and I get kind of blood in the veins, and my face gets real red when I talk about it, probably because I don't have a lot of time for people that are going to try to gain an edge by cheating. That's all that is, and the law protects us from that, actually. So that's what the police force is for, and that's what the legal system is for when we have people that behave in that way. And I do take it pretty seriously. And like I said, I put too many thousands up a year to to let people just kind of, even if it's a $25 league, I get really heated, in those small leagues. I'm trying to wean my way out of those, but I get really heated when people do collude, because that doesn't make sense. That kind of takes the whole spirit of what we're trying to do here out of it. But no, it definitely is something that I do, post as a rule, and make sure that that's very well known, that will forfeit a lot of money that you have, and that I do reserve the right to prosecute you, and I will. I mean, I just will. I'm not gonna, I'll do what I need to do to make sure that didn't go unnoticed with somebody, somewhere. So, I mean, that's kind of how I view colluding. I take it pretty seriously. And everything else, actually, I try to be really cool with. I mean, I think that life happens every other way, but except for when people, knowingly do something intentionally to harm. That makes no sense. And there's not a whole lot of spot for that in this, and we have bigger problems really in that kind of a league. So as I say that, I guess that's my stick on trades and the passion there. Draft order. This kind of started as an industry standard for me, and I've kind of evolved this a little bit, and it's going to keep evolving more, I think, as we go. But so when I started, we just basically did reverse order of finish like the NFL does, for the non-playoff teams. And again, we'll just address the 12-team league. So the bottom six would get the reverse order of finish, and then the top six would get the reverse order of playoff finish, and we call it a day. Well, it didn't take me long to figure out that people would game that system. And now, it's a difference to cheat and game. So when you game the system, you're basically finding a loophole in the system and exploiting it. Colluding is not a loophole, and so that's a different thing entirely. That is just out and out being fraudulent. So, but I would say that tanking, even if with a no tanking rule, it's hard to show tanking. It's kind of like when the NFL, if teams tank, if they really knowingly tanked, it's a big problem. But if we just think they may have tanked, then we just see what happens with that. And so I guess that's where things maybe go awry, and that's kind of how the NFL views tanking, is kind of how I view colluding. I go crazy, and they would go crazy if somebody were to tank. And so we don't want tanking, but so I decided to put rules in place to try to avoid it at most costs. Now, it doesn't mean you can't be bad, make bad decisions, and ride out those bad decisions based on your league. And so what I typically do is I try to create this environment where people want to play till the end of the regular season. And that's an important distinction. So in that 12-team league that we spoke of, I use max PF points, least to most, for the non-playoff teams at the end of the regular season. And what this does is it counts up the best scoring possibility, including your taxi squad, and those points. The max points that you potential is what max points PF 4 is what that stands for, and that just kind of sets the optimal lineup, including your taxi and your bench and all those things, and that feels like the worst roster will have the least amount of points, probably, with all probability. And so for the non-playoff teams, that feels like go play spoiler till the end. But what I don't want is I don't want people to play, and this is personal actually, I'm sure many leagues want to do this differently, and so I recognize it. I don't really understand it, and I'm still waiting to understand it, but I do recognize that there's a lot of leagues out there that want to play after week 14. I feel like you earn your way to play in the playoffs by having a good record, and so however you decide to put those 6 teams in the playoffs, I've seen them done a lot of different ways, but I feel like you play you owed 14 weeks for your money that you put in, and you play that as hard as you can, and the worst 6 teams are done at that point. So I don't like having consolation brackets. I don't want those people really doing waivers and improving their team, and just like the NFL in the playoffs, those teams aren't out there trying to block the Super Bowl teams from signing defensive backs off the couch, like the Rams did. And there wasn't like a team that was eliminated. It's like, I'm going to screw with the Rams because they beat me. They're not out there trying to add to their team. They wait till after the Super Bowl, then they start adding players. It's just kind of the same way, that we do, in our game leading up to our championship game. And so then, and I also don't like having, even in the championship round, rewarding third place. And so, because I feel like that's like having a consolation game on Super Bowl Sunday with the loser of the AFC Championship and the NFC Champion just playing this third, fourth game. And so once you lose in that championship bracket, then I slot you in. So week 15 in the playoffs, we're going to actually go from 6 teams, and we have 2 byes. So then we're going to go down to 4 teams. 2 teams get eliminated, and I go back to the regular season with those 2 teams, and I go reverse max PF for spots 7 and 8 there. And then in the semifinals, then the 2 teams that lose there, I then go back and I go back to the lat for picks 9 and 10, and that's the reverse max PF as well from the regular season. So as you notice, I'm always doing that. And third place in my preference is never playing for money, so that game doesn't even matter. And so once you lose, you're out, and you just get ready for the next year, and you start to look at your team and how you're going to win and be competitive the next year. And then I also like to put the reason I like money for first and second is because I feel like that's very relative of the NFL, but also in a dynasty world, it kind of is like over a 10-year period, you're trying to take your money how many times. If you win 4 times, wouldn't you like it to be a meaningful operation? And at what point is the break even? Or do you think that you should just be able to play every year? And maybe you're in a friends and family league where you just want to play every year. You want everybody to play 16 weeks. And so I'm not saying it's the only way. I'm just kind of saying why I do what I do. I really like to have a winner that gets paid a lot, a second place that almost won, so they get paid a little bit, and then we roll into year number 2 and year number 3 and so on. And I personally prefer an Empire pot where you actually, if you win back-to-backs, you really get some money, because I feel like that's hard to do. And in leagues this year, there was 2 back-to-back winners. I wasn't any of them, but it only happened twice out of 75 leagues. So I guess I think that it's really rare that people can run it back. And so when they do that, it should be like hitting the lottery, kind of, or in my mind. So that's kind of how I like to do it. But I understand that there's not very many people that maybe have that mindset. And so I play in 75 leagues currently, and there's no Empire pots, including the leagues that I run, because I do try to allow the owners of the leagues to have the flexibility to kind of have it be their league, because ultimately there's some people that are playing for fun. I mean, I take it maybe more seriously than that, but that's kind of how I want to try to have the draft order. I'm a little bit more like, hey, this is the way to do the draft order. I am looking forward to possibly doing a similar to the NBA style draft order though for the non-playoff teams, and maybe even throwing the later the first eliminated teams into that lottery as well, just having a lesser chance of getting the number 1 overall pick, and the worst team in max PF to getting no lower than the 4th pick, but just kind of having a fun online celebration somewhere right around the Super Bowl of the NFL time, but after our playoffs are done, and kind of have the ping pong balls and do that live online for the league itself. And I'm working on something like that now. Again, if we do something like that, it would be a year out. We would not do that today. We would not do that for the 2022 rookie draft. We'd be looking to do that for the 2023 or 2024 rookie draft if we decided something like that today, because we don't want to make a change that is already in place, for this year, and would have consequences of somebody that is going to stay around and be a long-time member. We want to make sure that their interests are protected. Even if they're the only person that made trades for that 2022, they might get voted out 11-1, but that one is important because they played under a pretense, and everybody else has a distinct advantage to push them out. And it would be like we taking a vote whether Pat Mahomes should leave my team or not. Well, 11 players are going to want Pat Mahomes to be a free agent, and only me is going to want Pat Mahomes to stay on my team, naturally. So, it's kind of like that. You can't vote on those kind of things because there's a distinct advantage and a disadvantage to one team. So, of course, they're going to be the one person that votes it down. It would be like me, us having a vote whether I pay $500 and every other player plays a $100. Now, yeah, I'm not going to vote for that, but probably everybody else would love to see that happen. So, that's something to keep in mind. And And then for most of us, we like to have a little bit of fun with fantasy football. Maybe it's an outlet. Maybe it's something that's just kind of a means to an end. Now, and then other people, some part of that fun is maybe the board chatter. And so I personally take a route on a lot of the leagues of being maybe a villain. And so I'll say some things to just kind of get the board distracted on maybe what I'm saying and not what I'm doing. And so, but there's a lot of ways to play that. I guess what I have learned though, and maybe as an apology to some of my past league mates, is don't make those digs personal. Try to keep them football related, or kind of keep them guessing with maybe not telling the truth with what you're doing, but try not to make them personal, especially these are guys that you probably want to have in the league long term. Again, it's a dynasty league. It's not like you're switching every year with a redraft. So keep that in mind and kind of keep everything above the belt if you could. But trash talking is part of it. I mean, I think that's part of the fun that people probably allow for, and the skill that maybe is involved. And then the other thing that it would be important to basically know and post is the league calendar, or the when you do what you do. When the payments are due, when the things are pinned, when the free agency period starts or the fab starts, how long the fab budget's good for. Does it reset at the regular season, or does it go for the whole year? Some of those items are not in the sleeper rules, because there are a lot of things in the sleeper rules when you can follow them, but there's things like that. How the draft order is determined, maybe pinning the draft order so there's not a whole lot of confusion. How you deal with multiple teams being got orphaned in the same year. Is there a dispersal draft, or are they just picked up? How do you acquire those teams? How do you find them? How do you advertise for them? How do you assign those teams? Those are all things that are good to have hammered out or have a plan for. Some of the things that are coming in Sleeper that is important to kind of know about as well is a 7-team playoff format. So kind of like the NFL, each conference has 7 teams. Currently, they have a 4-team, a 6-team, and an 8-team playoff, but 7 is coming. We're gonna actually, in my 32-team leagues, we're actually going to make a 14-team league playoff system, and we're going to manually set that we're going to have that set to 8, because we're going to manually put in the first week of the playoffs. The last week of the regular season will change to a playoff week, and we'll insert them there, and we'll get down to a final 8 for the first round of what Sleeper considers the playoffs, and that's going to be our workaround. And so that's an important piece, that there's a lot of workarounds if you talk with Sleeper and their staff. I got some good ways, creative ways to do a dispersal draft on Sleeper. One of the things I like about Sleeper is all the draft picks you trade get reassigned in the draft order. It's pretty easy going. As soon as you do the draft order, then those trades flow to the draft order. On drafting, and that brings me to a thing. So I've done tons of drafts. Obviously, 75 rookie drafts each year I do. So kind of think about that. So to be able to do them, what I found, and this will sound almost ridiculous, and if you don't want to do it, I understand, but then I'm just going to caution you to look at this. The Sleeper players I play with are around the globe, not around the U.S., but around the globe, and so they sleep at different times. So again, we can make this East Coast, which I've said my time zone, but I'm playing in a league right now where they set everything to turn the clock off for Mountain Time. Well, that's great for 3 of the guys, but the other 9 of us are somewhere else, and it's kind of dumb. So we have this 4-hour time clock that's long enough but short enough. The fastest way to get through a draft, I found, this will sound almost ridiculous, fastest way, having no clock. And the reason is, when people have a clock, they wait till the end of the clock to make their pick. When they have no clock, there's like this pressure to pick. But if you don't pick, people are just kind of sending you messages, and if you have trades coming in, then you don't pick until you're ready to pick. And I've never had somebody go a day on the Sleeper platform and not pick. Drafting is fun. Nobody's ever gone a day. Now, I've had to coax people into it. Hey, just sending them a DM. Hey, you're on the clock, and I always reserve the right that I'm going to put you on a 12-hour clock if I just don't see any involvement. But the players we play with and especially in rookie drafts, just don't have a clock. Like, if maybe they got tied up in a meeting and they just it does take 6 hours from the time they checked, and you have a 4 hour clock. But if you have no clock, it's that way. Now, the other way to do it, in my opinion, is 12 hours, never shutting it off, because none of us should sleep. I mean, while we're going to draft, hopefully we're not sleeping more than 12 hours, and you can wake up and look at your board and wait. That doesn't mean that people take 12 hours and you only have 2 picks a day. I mean, I drafted in that 384 team league and never shut off, and I think usually a vet draft takes about a week and a half or 10 days, and a rookie draft takes less than a week. I mean, we start them on a Friday, and usually if running through the weekend, we're done Monday or Tuesday on a 4 round or 5 round rookie draft. Like, it doesn't take long. Like, it's not long, even if it's over the vacation time. Like, I stagger some of mine. I know my friends and family league, we actually do our drafts. We don't have a timer because people are on vacation different times, and I'd rather not have them worry about their family guys. They have the kids at the beach or whatever they're doing. I'd rather them just check when they're coming in for dinner. Just make your pick and go. And sometimes I have their cell phone. I'll send them a text, say you're on the clock, and I don't know. We just never had trouble with it, and so 75 leagues, I've just never had that be a thing. And I guess I think if it was a thing in 75 leagues, it would show up. So I caution you guys to think about the no clock thing, or the 12-hour clock thing is fine. When you start getting it fast, and then let's look at fast drafts. Fast drafts are fine if you want everybody to be together. That feels really old school to me. There's no trading that happens in a fast draft. There's just not enough time. You can even set it for 10 minutes. That's about the dumbest time, in my opinion, to have it, because it's not enough time to trade, but it's too much time to not be prepared. Like, I really want the prepared people, and if you think about it, I'm drafting 75 rookie drafts, so I'm going through each team per day, probably before those rookie drafts happen. But this morning, actually, before doing this video, I was actually laying out my draft board, and so I was documenting my first 36 picks. Like, that's what I write down, and I put each team and where they pick, and then if I trade, at this point, I'll move those yellow paintbrush on the Excel sheet around, and then I'll put my projections in there. Like, I'll have my draft list times all those leagues, and then I'll put my targets in those spots, and then I'll see where I am with my targets. And I know who I'm going to draft before we get there. Like, my draft order is my draft order. I just take the best person, and if I don't want to take the best person, I take the person around it. So I mean, I'm fairly prepared, and I do it times 75. So I guess it's hard for me to understand why somebody would take a lot of time. Like, if I'm on the clock and not going to trade the pick, I'm probably going to pick in 30 seconds. Like, I don't need 12 hours. I don't need no amount of time. You pick, I pick. And sometimes I do that. That's another way to influence the board. If they know you're not going to wait around and pick and meander around, and they want that pick, they'll get it to you quicker, and they'll tend to give you a better offer on the door. There won't be this negotiating thing, because they know, hey, Ed's no joke. He's going to just pick. He's not going to play around. If I don't send him what he wants, he's picking, and then I don't get the pick. So I actually have that reputation. I want that reputation. So part of my quick pick is that way, and so understand that and maybe that's why I guess I like to have that amount of time. But if there is somebody making a trade, I hate to have the clock slow them down. Now, you'd say, well, the NFL has a 15-minute timer, but I would also say that they set up those trades. I knew a little bit of the players in the people in the war room for the trade up for Justin Fields, and that was set up a couple days prior to that. If Fields was still there, we're going to move up, and you can do that with players in this kind of a league, is set things up. My experience has been that's a little bit more challenging, here, because there seems to be a lot less predictability on the draft picks than there is in the NFL. And maybe that's not true. But over 75 leagues, I haven't been able to predict the players of who they are. Maybe we're too new, as most of my leagues are in the first 5 years of existence, so I don't know the tendencies of each of the owners, and there's a switch over of how they do it. But I think it's a lot less predictable, our league, so then it's harder to set trades up ahead of time too much. I mean, obviously you can set up the third pick in the draft, but to set up pick 15 is hard, whether that be in the first round or the second round of to know what that player is going to be, and I'm going to move if that player's there, and I'm already going to have talks. I think you can have that idea in your own mind that, hey, if my player's there, I'm going to move up or move around, or if my player's not there, I'm going to move down, and you might need that time. So I just kind of use that for as you're setting up a draft and your season calendar and some of the things there. You know, ultimately though, most people are using this as a fun environment. So I do encourage you to keep it light, keep it fun, and just be kind of think through the decisions you make and how it might affect everybody and what the outcomes will be. That would be the cautionary tale. So as you guys can see, I'm really passionate about this. Tell me what doesn't make sense about what I've sold. I expect you guys to all hate on that there's no third place money, because I had 20 leagues that told me how dumb that is, that we don't pay third place because the Olympics have gold or silver medal, I don't know, bronze medals or something. And it's just beyond me. I don't like paying losers, but whatever. I mean, everybody's going to do it differently, and I don't really like those third and fourth place teams affecting the championship team. I guess that's where the outcome I'm looking to avoid. But put it in the comments. Hit that subscribe button, and hit the like button or the dislike button, because this video maybe you'll have some dislikes. So I'm okay with that. I know that we're not going to please everybody, but if you do want to get into one of my leagues that has a orphan team, hit me up in the comments as well. And I look forward to coming back to you next Sunday with another recap show and answering some of your questions. So encourage those questions as well. Until next week, and until tomorrow's team that we analyze, so long.